For me personally, this has been quite a joy to both produce as general director of the company and also as a stage director, because I think these are very special works. I've always loved the music of Ravel and Debussy, and he's certainly a well-loved composer for his symphonic music. Those of you that love symphonic music, Ravel's Bolero is probably his best-known work, but his two piano concerti and his string quartet and so many of his songs and his piano solo music and his ballet music, Daphnis and Chloe, the Mother Goose Suite. I mean, they're all so well loved. And yet he only wrote 2 operas. These 2 on X. So you can all leave the theater tonight and say, I've seen every opera that Maurice Ravel ever composed, because you've experienced his entire operatic output this evening. Part of what I love about this evening, too, doing these 2 pieces together, which incidentally is the West Coast premiere of the 2 of them being performed together, is one is relatively early in his career. L'Heure Espagnole was composed in 1911, and L'Enfant et les sortileges was composed in 1925. He died, I believe, 1935 or 37. So you sort of get both, a wonderful early work and then a late work that is really, Ravel in his absolute prime, as a composer. So I love pairing them together, and the fact that they're dramatically also so different. The first being this bedroom farce that's all about timing and getting the clock on time and getting the clock off stage on time and getting the bass and the tenor into the clocks and out of the clocks before they get carried away. I mean, that's just a lot of fun to do, and so the first piece is very much about comic timing. And really, it's like the opera itself is sort of like one long recitative. You don't really get a big number until the quintet at the very end. You have exquisite sort of, fragments of arias and melodies. But L'Heure Espagnole was actually Ravel saw the play. The play was a big hit in Paris in 1904, and he actually attended a performance of the play and then got the rights to the play and more or less set the play almost verbatim to music. I mean, there are a few sentences here and there that are not in the opera, but it was a huge hit in Paris, and then Ravel set it to music. And then you have something very, very different, which is, this exquisite fantasy with a libretto by Colette, of all people, herself quite a colorful and theatrical character, and a colleague of Ravel's, and so you have something emotionally and dramatically very, very different. So I just find this evening, both musically and emotionally, just a very satisfying look at a great, great composer. Please welcome our bass baritone for tonight, Nick Nelson, who we saw on stage. I always like to ask a few people to come join me. Now, Nick is a member of our Young Artist Program. He's in his first year in the Portland Opera Studio Artist Program. You saw him do Don Inigo tonight, the guy with the white wig. You might not recognize him, right? In the first opera, and then a series of roles in the second opera. So let me start, and certainly if you have any questions for Nick or for myself, we'd be happy to answer them. Let me start by asking you a question, sir.
Sure.
Because I know you've sung a wide variety of music. But what is it about learning the music of Maurice Ravel? What is it about learning, these 2 pieces? That's different or challenging or satisfying, because these operas are sort of like an island unto themselves. They're so unlike any other operas, right? So what's been your experience learning this music and working on these operas?
Well, I think musically, because Ravel was composing at a time when we were basically reaching the limits of what tonality could produce. I mean, this is after Wagner and Schoenberg had started writing his 12th music, and so he is cramming every bit of music that he can possibly fit into each beat and each measure. And so there's a lot of beautiful music from the classical and Baroque periods where it's all very together and concise, and there's a lot of doubling of parts, but Ravel uses every instrument and every voice in such a unique way, and there's very, very few parts in the opera, in both pieces, where you're being doubled by an orchestra. You're always working against the orchestra and finding different harmonies, and he just makes it as advanced and as textured as it can possibly be, while still remaining very tonal and beautiful. is the big part of it. And I think also the way that everything is very naturalistic as far as the evocations of different objects and animals, and also the way that L'Heure Espagnole so beautifully captures the French language and the way it's actually spoken. I mean, we could speak in the exact rhythms that he has set, and it would sound completely natural, as if we're not reading music at all. And I think that very speech-like quality gives it a very natural and powerful effect, but it still works very well musically.
Let me add to that. Yeah, actually, along that line, Ravel attended all 14 performances of the world premiere of Pallias and Malmaison by Debussy. For those of you that might be familiar with Pallias, and clearly, just picking up on what Nick said, clearly Ravel was very, very influenced by that work. Debussy and Ravel are often referred to as the two great French Impressionist composers. So, they were composing music when Monet was painting the water lilies, and when painters were experimenting with different textures and use of color in a much more impressionistic way and suggestive way, Debussy and Ravel were composing in a similar vein. In just researching this period in this opera, he was very, very influenced by Pallias, and there's even instructions in the score to L'Heure Espagnole, where he very specifically says he preferred that this opera be approached in a speaking manner, except for the role of Gonzalo, the tenor, because obviously he has very florid music to sing, because that's part of his character, and the quintet that ends the opera. But he wanted the singers to focus much more on speech, and speech with rhythm and approximate pitch attached to it. So he was trying something very different with this work, certainly with L'Heure Espagnole. Any questions for Nick or Stephen Brenflick, our tenor, who is just joining us here? Stephen, you saw as Gonzalo in the first opera, speaking of the dreamy poet, and then you saw him as a frog and the math teacher and the boxing teapots in Act 1. Yeah?
Just detail, how did they get out of the clock?
How did they get out of the clock?
We didn't. We were inside the whole time.
Yeah.
Matt had to work out for months before the show.
That's part of the fun of designing this opera and directing it and working actually with these two gentlemen, because these are the guys that were going in and out of those clocks constantly. You want to let them in on a secret?
Hey, you're the boss.
Stephen. No, okay.
Behind the clock on the wall, there was a small part of the wall opened up like a door. In the back of the clock at the bottom were cloth, covered with cloth, so we could sneak out that way.
Yeah.
And was you the same?
Yep.
The same.
So
Yeah,
poor fellow
same thing,
didn't
yeah.
really have to tell you.
Yeah. So but the timing was very.
Yeah.
It's very split second, because they have to close the door and then get out the bottom immediately before the baritone, the muleteer, would lift it up. So and then get back in. At times.
But I had all those props underneath my jacket. I had them. Yeah.
Even the painting?
Yes,
Yeah.
even the painting.
Did Body Fox, you guys moved so well in that second opera. I mean, you
Thank
look
you.
like dancers. Did you have coaching from Body Fox?
Let me just repeat the question. The observation is that the singers you saw today moved so well in the second opera, and the question is, did you have coaching and movement, and you mentioned Body Box. Now, Lane Hunter and Ann Egan, both of whom have danced with Body Box, and we've collaborated with them most recently on Carmina Burana. They were in the cast tonight, and Ann Egan, who played the White Cat, she was one of the White Cats, is actually our choreographer. So yes, we had their help in physicalizing a lot of the work. And this is an opera that I've directed 3 or 4 times before, and so I wanted to find a very kind of physical language in which to approach it. But what can you guys add to that in terms of just the